Welcome back to 1 Minute Recess, where we dive into news, politics, and off-the-record moments shaping Nevada and beyond. My name's Annette.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mike there, Maria Teresa, and together, every week, we explore what happens during those recesses that aren't just 1 minute, both on the floor and off, from political drama, cultural chaos, whatever's going on, and we ask, what the fuck is going on? So let's get into it, starting off with our recess rundown, which is your cheat sheet to all the drama and goings on in Carson City. Annette, what happened this past week? What's going to happen next week?
Yeah, I think let's do a looking forward rather than a looking back, since we just uploaded the podcast on Thursday. There's going to be a lot of bill hearings coming up. So if there's an issue you care about, there's probably going to be a bill hearing for it in the next 2.5, 3 weeks. Just to keep people updated, there's going to be a bill hearing on the psilocybin pilot project, which we had Kate and Blair on. That's going to be on Wednesday this week. So probably while you're hearing this podcast be uploaded, that's going to be happening. We are also going to see a couple of gun bills that are going to be talked about this week in committee. We are going to hear a bunch of different topics from taxes, revenue, things like that. So pay attention to that. We also have some other animal bills to be watching for around pet stores, things like that. So lots going on in Carson City because now we're starting to get on the deadline schedule. And so for those who don't know, our legislature is 120 days. We have to be constitutionally mandated to be out of session by June 2nd, 2025. Weekends count of those 120 days. And so it's really important now that everybody start to know the deadlines and to start to know when things need to be through. So I'm just scrolling through right now. The next committee deadline, the first House committee deadline, is going to be April 11th. So mid-April, that's in about 2.5 weeks. Everything has to be out of the first House committee. Then following that, the second deadline that comes right after that is April 22nd, and that's first House passage. So everything will need to be out of the first House by April 22nd and switch houses so it will go through the same process in the opposite house. So if it starts in the Senate, it needs to be out of the Senate. If it starts in the Assembly, it needs to be out of the Assembly and switch houses. The only way that doesn't need to happen is if it's exempt from those deadlines. The second House committee passage deadline is May 16th, and then the second House passage deadline will be May 23rd. So April and May are really important deadline months, and that's why you see everything starting to move faster and everything starting to happen more quickly with that. So we'll put that in the chat so everybody can look at the calendar, but that's why it's starting to feel like more bill hearings are taking place and more stuff is coming up for the Nevada Legislature. So lots going on, lots to watch for.
And I'm going to ask you a few questions as if I were a noob, for all the noobs out there that are like, no clue what she just said, explain a little further. So, or drill it down even more. So you said that there are deadlines and that you were seeing them. Can the public see these deadlines? And if so, where?
Yeah, so there's a link on the Nevada Legislative website. If you go just Google literally the Nevada Legislature, there is a 120-day calendar on there. We're going to post it in the chat. And it goes through the first day of session till the 120th day of session and all of those deadlines in between. And it explains what some of those deadlines are. If you're on the website, you can look up what those deadlines mean, like the Economic Forum report. What does that mean? You can go on the website and that'll actually explain what those things are. So take a look at the 120-day calendar. It will give you everything you need to know about the ND-Leg dates and when your bill has to be moving and when your bill has to be out of the first House and the second House.
And what happens when a bill that doesn't pass a deadline? It's what happens to it?
Well, basically that bill just goes bye-bye. It disappears. The language disappears. But nothing is ever dead at the Nevada legislature. Bills that are relevant to another bill can always be amended if it's in the same chapter of the NRS. So just because something dies one place doesn't mean it can't be amended in somewhere else. Now, obviously, there's a process if that happens, and it will have to go to a conference committee and other things have to happen. But the closer we get to the end and the faster things move, the more shenanigans happen. And the more things that get shoved into other bills or get put in other places, because we're running up against the clock, people are not paying as close of attention and things can get slipped in at any time. So if you have a piece of legislation that you're watching, if you have a bill that you're watching, make sure you're watching it very closely, especially if it's a hot topic, because you never know when something else can be amended into that.
And what about those exemptions you were talking about? You said unless a bill is exempt, right? So how does a bill get exempt, and how can people make sure maybe their bill or know if their bill gets exempt?
Yeah, so if a bill, usually the bills that get exempted are either like leadership, emergency measure bills. So that's very rare. You got to be in leadership. It's got to be an emergency measure. Or you also have a fiscal note, meaning it costs money, meaning it will get referred to a money committee, which is the Assembly Ways and Means Committee or the Senate Finance Committee. Both of those committees operate the same way. They're similar committees. They're just called something different in each house. But if it costs money, usually it's exempt from most of those deadlines, and it will be given an exemption because those budgets don't start to close on the 120-day calendar until the very end. So it's really important, again, to watch those deadlines and watch where your bill is out on Nellis. We put up the explainer last week. Maria went through how Nellis works, how to track 10 free bills. So if you see that your bill is given an exemption, usually that means it is exempt from those rules. So you got to watch closely, though. Anything can happen at the NV Ledge and anything can move in weird ways. And so just because a rule is put in place now doesn't mean that the rules aren't also going to be lifted at the very end. So silly season comes towards the end of session in late May, and things just move weird. And so you got to pay attention very closely to the process.
And just so folks can get a picture of how silly season can be, I think it was last episode you mentioned you started in the legislature in your career when you were young. And so you've been on both sides and you've been at it for a long, long time, even though you're still a spry young woman. And what has been like the craziest season moment you've had to live through?
Well, there's been so many. I remember when I used to work for Congresswoman Titus when she was a state senator. I was on this floor sitting there looking in chapters of NRS for a bill that had been killed by the majority that she was going to shove into another bill. And so I had to find the germane chapters and see what bills they matched with so we could shove this bill into another bill. So that was fun. I think that was in 2007, maybe 5. Various special sessions I've been a part of. I don't even know how many. I need to go back and actually look and see how many special sessions I've been involved. I mean, just last session in 2023, there were 2. That doesn't count all the COVID sessions and all the special sessions before that for the stadium and all that nonsense. So who knows how many special sessions I've been a part of, but this is my 10th regular session. And I've seen a lot of crazy stuff. I mean, there's been times where I've been running between committee rooms because we're trying to get one thing to another thing. I've seen people, it's kind of like the running of the interns in Congress, but you'll see at the very end someone running between the Assembly chamber and the Senate chamber because they'll pass something and they got to get it to the next chamber. They physically have to take it from one chamber to the other so it passes on time before the midnight deadline. So it's wild. And I remember when you and I would be bill tracking together, I'm like, okay, check it for this, check it for that, make sure it's moving. We would have a whole checklist of the bills we were following, making sure that nonsense wasn't being amended in or things weren't being changed. There's also always, my favorite thing is behind the bar. So they'll take a 1-minute recess on the floor. And then they'll do a behind the bar, which means essentially like a committee meeting to introduce a last minute bill or pass a last minute bill or resurrect a last minute bill in a committee in the actual Senate chamber or Assembly chamber where the whole body takes votes. So you'll physically have to be in there listening to what is happening. I remember last session,
Or the veranda like this.
one of the assembly members, I was like listening into the behind the bar committee meeting going on with education. And that's where they were working on that last minute deal with the governor on the education bill. And I kept texting you, okay, this is going in the bill. This is not going in the bill. It's just going to be school buses for charters. They're not funding, vouchers. They're not funding this. They're not funding that. So being in the chamber and actually sitting there, that is when that stuff really matters. And that is when having a good lobbyist or somebody who represents you, who can give you information, is also really important. It's why I believe being in the building is so important, because you got to be there. You got to experience the actual process. And you got to be able to hear things, right? Because had I not been sitting there, you and I would have known none of that. So there's a lot to be said with understanding the process, which again, if you don't understand the process of how a bill becomes a law in Nevada, the Nevada Legislative website has a really good explainer. It's got arrows and everything of how a bill becomes a law. And then second of all, if you don't understand all of this and you don't understand how a bill becomes a law, make sure you understand the 120-day calendar, and make sure you have somebody who's sitting there who can give you information if you don't have the privilege of being in Carson City. Because understanding this process and being active in this process means sometimes you need eyes and ears in the building. And if you're friends with me, I'm happy to do that for you too. So use us as a resource if you have questions on the process too.
I remember those behind the bars, and I think those are a testament to what you just said about and I think Cecile Richards' mom, the fabulous Governor Ann Richards of Texas, said, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And a lot of times that's where those behind the bars things happen, because it is a legitimate committee hearing or vote. And if you're not there to understand, it's not like they're going to say, okay, we're going to give everyone time to read it on Nellis, and then you can negotiate, lobby, meet with, you might not even be able to meet with the legislator by the time they vote on the floor. So tell us about, are a new person might be like, are those even legal then? Those behind the bars, is that even can they do that? And can the public participate in a behind the bar? Because it's really just the legislators, right?
Legally, yes. The legislators have to allow the public to participate in the behind the bar. However, they don't have to broadcast it. They don't have to make it accessible to people at home. So again, that's the part of the process of really having somebody there in the building who's watching and listening, especially if some of the, we call it the end game, right? If some of the end game stuff, the big bills, the controversial bills, where the deals are being cut between the Democrats in the Assembly and Senate and the Republican in the governor's mansion, that stuff happens on the last day, last night, because we're trying to get out of session, and finally they're getting down to making deals and getting us out of legislative session. So you have to be in the building. Anybody who says otherwise is lying to you. If you have big bills that are caught up at the end, or if you're an organization who works on big legislation or holding people accountable, you need to be physically in the building, because those behind the bars are not published online, or there's no live stream or feed to any of that. You need to be physically there to listen. Now, if the public is in the audience in the Senate or the Assembly, you are allowed to go and listen to the behind the bar. On the Senate side, it happens kind of off to the right-hand side of the room, and people literally physically run down there and go on the floor of the Senate. It's the only time real people are allowed on the Senate floor. And that's where press and that's where lobbyists and the public can listen to the behind the bar. On the Assembly side, it's a little bit easier because they have a big chamber kind of behind the Assembly floor chamber. So they come up through the middle and then have the behind the bar right where everybody is kind of seated. So if you're seated in the right place, strategically, like I always was, you're literally sitting right next to where the committee will happen. And so, again, you can kind of hear what's going on. And also make friends with a legislator who you know is going to be on that committee, because especially at the end, it's always education. It's always the big bills. So know what bills are going through where. So this way, you know who's on what committee. I always strategically know which legislators are on which committees. So this way I can tap into them if I cannot hear what's going on in those committees during a behind the bar. So you got to be strategic, and you kind of got to be scrappy at the end, because honestly, a lot of shenanigans can happen. And if you're not there and you're not physically there to listen, if you care about something that's big at the end, especially like education, you need somebody in the building actually watching and listening to what's going on.
So what you're telling me is, if I wanted to lobby, or if I'm part of an organization or a volunteer or something, and I really wanted to advocate or lobby, which any citizen can advocate, you can actually, they give out those lobbyist tags for free, even for citizens.
Yeah, just know who's there doing what.
You're saying I can't just do it from home.
You can, especially if you live in Vegas, you can, but tap into somebody who you know is going to be there in the building. Or if you're an organization, try and figure out how to be up here the last week of session, especially going into Sine Die, which is the last day of the legislative session, meaning the end. Have somebody here to listen, to understand, who understands the process, to actually know what's going on. If you care about those big bills at the end, it's not enough to just tune in from home if you're trying to hold somebody accountable.
And, I think two things to contextualize for people. I think one of the biggest jarring things that make you realize why is the moment you walk into that building, you see just how many lobbyists there are, and how many of them may have nice suits and may be paid very highly by things that might be against your bill. And they are talking, they have more staff, they're meeting with those people. Tell us the impact of, the sort of the, we always used to talk about how lobbying on the trail, like it's not always just in a sit down formal meeting, but a lot of times, most of the times, everyone and their mother up there that's on that lobbyist list is lobbying every second of the day. So at any moment, a legislator can change their minds just because of what someone told them in the elevator.
Or vice versa.
Yeah.
I can give information that pisses me off and changes the course of a bill. Don't forget, there's a lot of power to be had by being in the building. It's interesting being a paid lobbyist, like a true paid lobbyist now. Before with our organization, I was a paid lobbyist, but like I worked for an organization, right? I didn't get to work on random bills. I didn't get to work on really business stuff. Like I get to work on all kinds of stuff now. And I have my fingers in all kinds of stuff now. And I am talking to legislators that I have never gotten to work with before, because I work on lots of different stuff now, right? And so there are also legislators in that building who I've known for 20 plus years since I've been doing this work. Even before, like Ruben De Silva, the assemblyman, since I was in high school, we were in council together. Like every time I see him and I'm with young people, he's like, let me tell you a story about when Annette and I were in high school together. We are not young chickens anymore. And so a lot of these people I've known a really, really long time. And I've built those relationships with over the years. And again, people pay me to have relationships with these legislators. They pay me for my relationships with legislators. And they pay me because I'm good at gathering information. And by the way, if you do something shady, as happened last week, Maria, you're smirking because you know what I'm talking about, because I still give Maria all the tea. If you do something shady, like have a meeting and kick me out of it, I'm gonna find out. I'm always gonna find out, friends. Just know that. I'm always gonna find out. So, it's very interesting when that happens too, because then I have the upper hand and I have the information. So just want to put that on the record for anyone who's listening. That was a fuck around and find out situation, because then I found out. You fucked around, I found out. So just want to put that out there. Anyways, so lobbyists have a lot of power in the building because of term limits too, right? So we've been there. A lot of us have been there a really long time, but also with term limits, some of those long-standing legislators aren't there anymore. The Maggie Carltons of the world, right? She is not there anymore. So a lot of these legislators are new. We have a ton of new freshman legislators who still don't quite know how the building works, still don't quite know how the process works. They're still finding out how things really work. So the lobbyists have a lot more power these days. And being in the building matters. They see you and they're like, oh, God, why is she here?
Well, shit.
This, right? We've heard stories about that previously. Like, why were Maria and Annette in the building again? I'm like, well,
When are they leaving?
We're back. Hello. So yeah. So long story short, there are a lot of paid lobbyists in that building who have a lot of power, who know a lot of information, who know all the gossip, who know where all the bodies are buried, who have long-term memories about what has happened before, who's screwed them before, who's done shady shit with them before. And we don't forget. And we will get you back eventually. And so this is also the season when randomly, magically, bills just start to die. Good bills just start to die. And a lot of times that has to do with who's participating in those bills and who has the power to go to leadership or go to other places and get things killed. It's crazy how that happens.
There's a lot of dynamics that I think, unless you've been in the building, you do not understand. And even when you're in the building, it takes you. I will always remember, I think it was Assemblywoman Maggie Carlton, maybe when she was about to be set off into the sunset, she said, that it wasn't until one of her last terms that she finally figured out exactly to a T how everything works.
And she was there for 25 years, right?
Well,
she was there before term limits.
Yeah. And she was like, and that's terrible, because I think also, one of the things I wanted to ask is, you talk regular session, special session. How often do regular sessions happen? Because I think that's part of it, that people aren't going back every few months. It's every few millenniums, apparently. And what the heck is a special session, and what do they do, and how are they different?
Yeah, that's a really good question. A regular session is because, the state of Nevada hates government. And apparently we all think that, well, I don't think, and you don't think, but the general public seems to think these legislators make a ton of money and are just up here getting rich doing the legislature. That is not true. They're paid for 60 of the 120 days, and they're only paid $9,000 for those 60 days. They're paid a pittance. That's why you don't see more regular people actually doing it, because a lot of times you got to take time off work, or you even got to quit your job to be able to serve in the Nevada legislature. So either you're independently wealthy, or you have a job that is incredibly flexible and allows you to be in the legislature on a short-term basis every other year. Nevada has Nevada is on an every 2-year legislative cycle. So we do not have budget years like some other states who don't have professional legislatures. We do not have I think in New Mexico, they have a 40-day budget session and then a 90-day regular session every other year. We don't do that. So our legislature is meeting now in 2025. They will not meet again until 2027 now. So we got to get everything done in 120 days, only 120 days. And if it misses that deadline on the 120th day, it literally waits until 2027. You don't get another bite at the apple. For special sessions, if it's right after session, like it was last time, directly after legislative session, because they ran out of time on the big bills and now they got to ram some nonsense through, or if there's some sort of crisis like there was during COVID, or if you want to do a stadium randomly, you will do a special session. The legislature can call themselves into a special session, but it takes 2/3 to do that. And with the way the government's set up right now, that won't happen because we don't have a supermajority with one party in the assembly. So the governor has to call them into special session. And the governor, when he calls them into special session, it has to be on basically a proclamation. And it can only be the things on the proclamation that they can meet about. So the governor will set the agenda and they cannot meet about anything else other than what is on that very defined agenda that the governor gives them. So the governor will call them in, he sets the agenda, and then they sine die. So he cannot set a timeline. There's like a reasonable amount of time that they're given. So sometimes it will go 1 day, some days it'll go 15 days. It just kind of depends on what's happening and where we're at in Carson City. But most special sessions are pretty short because they want to get in and out, because every day that we're in a special session costs taxpayers a lot of money because you got to call all the staff back in. You got to do all these extra things.
That sounds so much fun. And I love that you finally said the magic words, the S and the D, sine die. Although sometimes I want to say sine die, like in Latin.
It's Latin.
Without day for anyone, like no more days. We're done.
The end.
The end. Finito. And so sine die, do they really have to be done by then? Like, is that the thing? And when on the day? Like, is it like close of business? Is it midnight?
Midnight. But it didn't used to be midnight. It used to, because of daylight savings time and them calling themselves in when we were on the fall schedule of daylight savings time. They would give themselves an extra hour, and they would milk that extra hour. They would go till 1 a.m. instead of midnight, but then there was some sort of ruling and whatever. So now they go directly to midnight on the 120th day, and they have to be done. That's it. No more. It's over. So at midnight, they're literally watching a clock. And when an official clock strikes midnight, that's it. We're done. And they will stop in the middle of whatever they're doing, and they have to sine die.
And what happens if there was work being done? What happens to it? Does it really just...
Unless it gets picked up in a special session, it's wait until the next session. So if there's still bills to go, I've seen it happen. There are bills on the secretary's desk, meaning like somebody has moved it in the floor session to the secretary's desk just to wait on an amendment or maybe to die. Or they're in the middle of working on a bill. They're in the middle of processing a bill. They're talking 1,000,000 miles a minute into their little microphone. And then it just stops. And you're like, well, either that's got to get picked up in a special session or that bill dies. And then we'll see it again next session. So
ta-da!
It's pretty fun.
It is. It is. The last week is amazing. And it's the running of the lobbyists, I like to call it, especially when it's those last few bills that are... You got to have a hearing all of a sudden because nobody heard it, and this lobbyist just
somebody forgot it somewhere. I don't know how you forget it, but like
so
somebody dropped the ball somewhere in 120 days, and you're trying to frantically catch up. So these things happen. It's very funny.
Yeah. Well, I think this was like a good primer on
what's coming.
Yeah, because I think, not a lot of people experience it, and then a lot of people who do experience it actually talk about it and how it actually happens, but especially that internal part. Like you can go, like we said, you can go and do stuff at home or the building here in Las Vegas, but there's just something else about being in the building, and that's why people should take opportunities like grassroots lobby days or any other lobby days that come your way and get to go, because not a lot of people can take 8 hours and drive up there or fly or do all that. But there are scholarships that will help pay your way out, and you get to experience all of what we just said, which is a whole other world.
And it's fun for me because then I get to see my friends in the building. So this week I get to see like Steve Horner. I get to see Mary Dungan again. I get to see Jamie. Next week I get to see you and my husband and Akiko. So I love lobby days because all my family comes up here and visits me in Carson City. So it's kind of a nice reprieve from being just trapped with the same, 30 lobbyists I talk to every day and same legislators I talk to every day. And I love all those people, but
It's
nice to have normal, real people in the building too. I love it.
And now that you mentioned normal, real people, a lot of the overall experience of Carson City and being in Northern Nevada is something else. So now let's go into the lifestyle 101 of Envy Lynch. Let's start with what are your favorite places to eat up there? What do you do when you're eating?
Yeah. I think favorites are a strong word. What are the options to eat depending on my mood is really the real question here. I mean, I think everybody knows if you've been in Carson City, if you don't know, you should come. First of all, you should see it. It's a cute little city. It has grown on me over the years. I do love Carson City. However, it is a town of approximately 60,000. It's not very big. There's not very many places to shop. Thank God I have a Trader Joe's that really gets me through. Costco, that gets me through. There's a Costco and a Trader Joe's here. And when Target's not acting like a douchebag, we got a Target here too. So those are kind of like usually my 3 go-tos for like where I can shop. There's nothing else.
Truly, there's not, I can attest. That's it.
Oh, Michael's. I feel very happy to have a Michael's up here. And a World Market. That's good. That's good when it comes to like decorating the house and stuff and like going somewhere else. So that's nice. So I do feel spoiled to have that stuff. In addition to that, there is, Thai basil, everybody's favorite. That's my very favorite Thai restaurant in all of Nevada. And that's saying something because I love Thai food, but I love Thai basil. I think their food is excellent. When my friends and family are up and we're staying in Carson City, that's my favorite place to go. Reno also has a lot of good food places, I have to say, very good. They've grown over the years, so going to Reno if you have some extra time is always an option, which I'm sure we'll do while you're here, Maria. But my very favorite restaurant, if I've got the extra time to go, and you're going to agree with me, Maria, because I know it, JT's in Gardnerville and Minden. It's an extra 30-minute drive. But JT's is a Basque restaurant. Northern Nevada is known for their Basque food. They have a strong Basque culture up here. If you don't know who the Basque people are, French and Spanish sheep herders who came to Northern Nevada because it's very similar to the climate in Spain and France, in the region they're from. Maria's part Basque. She'll talk more. Family style food, pecan punch.
Oh, and it's the official drink of Nevada.
Well, not yet.
Not yet?
No, Mark Amity tried. It never actually passed because people from Southern Nevada didn't want it. And I'm like, why? That's the dumbest thing I've heard. Stupid. Anyways, so there's a bill this session to make it the official drink of Nevada, which it should be. But then also having a 43 in cream be still my beating heart. I love JT's. That is my very favorite thing to eat up here. There have been lots of memories, like Facebook memories coming up, Maria, of our adventures at JT's, and I am so stoked we get to go there next week. I can't freaking wait.
I adore JT's. And yes, I think there are a lot of people that are like, who the hell are the Basque and what the hell are they? They're an institution in pretty much the rest of Nevada, and I think the UNR campus has like a giant statue of like a Basque playing jai, and it's pretty incredible to see how in Northern Nevada it's like everybody knows a Basque probably, and
yeah, sadly all of us know a Laxalt.
A Laxalt, yeah. And if you don't know, they're Basque, the Laxalts. And the good Laxalt, I believe it was Paul, he wrote pretty much like all the books about like, and they're in the legislative building at the gift shop of like the history of the Basques in Nevada and in the US. And so JT's is amazing. Basque food is amazing. Just like they can make lettuce delicious, and they do.
With vinegar on it. Lettuce and vinegar. Who knew?
Vinegar and lettuce, and it's family style, and the wine is amazing, and the pecan punch is not for the weak, but definitely for the adventurous, and the 43 and cream is delicious, and everyone should go to JT's at least once in their life.
Often now in the legislature, you will hear right after the legislature wraps up for the day, people will go across the street to the bank and have a drink. There's no food there. Sometimes there's food trucks there. They'll have like receptions. That's the other thing people don't realize is like a lot of us just go to the receptions, not because we respect or want to support what's going on at those receptions. I don't really care. Usually it's just to get the free food because we're all cheapskates up here too. And we all have to move up here. We all have to like move our lives, unless we live in Northern Nevada. We all have to move our lives up here. Ain't nobody want to come home and cook dinner. Now, I will. I have a fabulous kitchen, and that's the reason why I get places up here with kitchens. I do like cooking when I'm in session, especially because I don't love going out. But there are some good little restaurants here, like Lupo, that's pretty good. Great Basin Pub, pretty good. And then there's always Olive Garden, my fan favorite. And people be like, why do you like Olive Garden so much when you're in Carson City? I'm like, well, first of all, everything closes between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. So sometimes that's the only food you can get. And second of all, a good breadstick when you're upset or sad, it hits the spot.
Yeah, it's like penicillin. Just works. It just works. We've tried many times over breadsticks.
The last thing I will say is if you want to come to Carson City more as a tourist and less as a human being who has to move here every 2 years to do their job, the Carson City hot springs are awesome. It's very inexpensive to go there. There's a cute little restaurant next to it and a cute little brewery next to it. So the brewery is right next door to the restaurant. The restaurant's called Sassafras, LGBTQI friendly restaurant. It's super cute. And the hot springs are basically attached to it. And they have all these pools, like private pools and big open swimming pools. And the water is amazing. I love going to the hot springs when I have friends up. So bring your bathing suits if you want to come to Carson City. Come see the Capitol. Eat at a couple of the cute little restaurants on Main Street. And then, well, it's called Carson Street, literally, because there's 2 main streets. And then bring your bathing suit to go to the hot springs. And then make a trip out to JT's one night to have a pecan punch and some delicious meat.
Yeah, and is it true that Tahoe is nearby?
Tahoe is 30 minutes from here when the weather is good. Nick and I are actually heading up there on April 8th for a concert. So they have lots of concerts and stuff up there. It's super fun. I love going to Tahoe once the weather gets better. Usually the weather is better in like April and May. So if you're coming from the south or coming from anywhere else in the country, fly into Reno, go up to Tahoe. Tahoe is one of my very favorite places in the world. I love Lake Tahoe. It's beautiful. It's just so serene and nice. And then the other cute place that often gets left off the itinerary, but we should make it a point to go there more, is Genoa. And Genoa is a really cute little location between Carson City and Minden and Gardnerville, and it has the oldest bar in Nevada. And it's right at the base of the mountains where that divides basically the land from Lake Tahoe. So these giant mountains are right behind it. It's gorgeous. Genoa is a beautiful little town, and I love going there.
I still have yet to go, so
we'll have to make it a trip this time when you're out.
Yeah. So that's the lifestyle section of Carson City, NV Led 101.
Oh, Carson, my one street little town. I love it. I do love it here. I have a really nice little place here now, and it's grown on me. I hated it when I first moved here in 2005. The first time I was up for session, I was like, what in the hell is this? I was also like 19 and never have lived away from home. And this was the first place I ever lived away from, really first and only place I've ever lived away from home. But it's really grown on me. I really love it now.
It's also a little town.
Yeah, it's like an acquired taste.
Yeah. It definitely is. And they have cute little houses. They have like cute little neighborhoods.
Cute little neighborhoods, cute little town. It's very safe. Reno's beautiful now, and Reno really has a lot of stuff going on. And minus UNR, I loved Reno.
I have to clip that. Reno is beautiful.
Yeah, Reno is beautiful. Minus UNR. Make sure you get that part in there too, Maria.
My goodness. Anything else?
On UNR because they steal all our money and then build a beautiful campus, and UNLV gets the, remains, even though we're the ones paying the bills in the South. But, I don't have any opinions about this.
Doesn't sound like you do. Not one bit.
Don't have strong feelings about UNLV versus UNR.
FUNR, the official name. Okay, well, that was the legislative session. Anything else people should take before we go into the other segments?
Now, come up here, join me at the legislature. If you're coming, let me know you're coming. We'd love to see you while you're up here. All right.
Jinx. Now for the local lowdown. Annette, what's happening here in Nevada
Well,
other than session?
I mean, this is like a local lowdown. The link you have here, the local lowdown meets the rest of what's going on in the country / the nightmare is the Trump administration. So I feel like it kind of crosses the boundaries of the recess and going into WTF is going on in the world, because this is all where it comes together. Ford and Lombardo's AG Ford, by the way, and Lombardo, the governor, state their cases on the elimination of the Department of Education. So what happens to Nevada if these yahoos at the federal government actually do get rid of the Department of Education, which they're going to try very hard? It will take an act of Congress, so we'll see if they're successful. But AG Ford is running for governor against Governor Lombardo in 2026, so everybody should be paying attention to that now because that race has already started. And they're stating their cases on the elimination of the Department of Education. Maria, you want to run us through it?
Yeah, so the very low down and dirty is first, before I go into the low down and dirty, I want to just wait 10 seconds for people to think, what side is Lombardo on and what side is Ford on? Just think about it, close your eyes, breathe in and breathe out, and meditate on it. What do you think Lombardo thinks? And what do you think Miss Attorney General Ford thinks? Well, they're on opposite sides. And the governor of Nevada, Joe Lombardo, basically supports, he's just touting the Trump line.
So, yeah.
And now Attorney General Ford is criticizing him because I think, it's funny that people don't realize just how first we need to start, to explain this, we need to go back in time or go back into the Nevada thing of things. We are the worst in the country when it comes to education, like 51st on a good day. We rank behind a lot of times some, other state in the South that you might think would be worse than us. But no, we are worse in funding and many performance records and things like that. And so we're barely scraping by with public education here in Nevada. Can you imagine what will happen if there is a real elimination of the education department? Because the education department at the federal level provides a lot of grants, provides a lot of support, does a lot of research to make sure that education in our country is somewhat good and moving forward. And they are on opposite sides. Ford is on the good side. Lombardo is on the dark side with Darth Vader. And that's where we're at.
Yep. So, Maria, I don't even know how we're having a discussion about the elimination of whole ass things like the Department of Education. I mean, they wrote it all down in Project 2025, so it shouldn't surprise anybody. Somehow it still does, but anyways, yeah.
Yeah, there was a principal, and in the story, there's a principal from North Valley High School that says from 2023 to today, there have been the following investments for key programs. And this is just in the past 2 years, if I do my math right, CCSD education. $315 million in special education programs, $3.5 million to education of homeless children, $1.4 million for rural education programs, which is huge in Nevada because other than Vegas and Reno, everything is rural, and $621 million in federal Pell Grant funding to aid low-income students to attain a higher education, which I don't have any research on me, but having gone to UNLV, those Pell Grants, along with a Millennium Scholarship, are a lifesaver. And that's going to go away. So thanks, Lombardo, for siding with the stupid side of the argument.
There's also a new proposal that raises penalties for crimes at resorts. Have you seen this one, Maria?
No.
This one is a Republican state senator's bill. It's SB 371. This is Steinbeck's bill that creates additional penalties for crimes at Nevada resorts with more than 200 rooms and a casino. So it's interesting because I know folks tried to work on this before, but not quite sure about this one. I don't know how I feel about this one because I don't know why a strip property should be any different than a crime committed anywhere else. But it's an interesting concept to maybe try and cut down on riffraff down on the strip. I don't think it goes anywhere, but we'll have to watch it. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I think it's fascinating, though, that they're willing to make special crime zones, not like gun zones. We're like, we on the strip can regulate that certain things aren't allowed here, like, I don't know, an automatic rifle. But we will consider making it extra criminal for you to do something here. Maybe with that automatic rifle, too. So it's just hilarious that penalties, yes. Proactive measures, nah.
So I'm sure you heard the drama this week. This is something that's kind of local lowdown E, but it's also ND Leg E. Did you hear that the daily room cleaning bill came back last week? It was raised from the dead this session again by none other than my new state senator and Republican, Lori Rogich.
How?
The Republican whose husband is Sig Rogich. And if you don't know who that is, friends, Google it. Highly encourage you to Google that. He is the kingmaker in the Nevada Republican Party. And so the governor put out a missive last week saying, no, I will not sign said bill. It is DOA. So one of his very own Republicans put this in. And now the Governor Lombardo, is saying, nope, DOA. It is dead upon arrival on my desk. I will not sign it because the resorts don't like it. Do you want to talk about daily room cleanings and why that's so important, having a mom as a former housekeeper?
Yeah, that makes me so infuriatingly mad that it just goes to show you that some people just don't care. Lombardo, that he should try to clean rooms. They should send him to the strip and have him clean rooms for a day, see how he likes it, especially rooms that haven't been cleaned in like a week. Which, by the way, daily room cleaning, you can tie it to 1 October.
Yes, ma'am.
Because this is what the whole issue is. And it started technically before COVID. And if you travel, you probably notice this, not just in Vegas, but all over. Big corporations, resorts corporations have been going away from daily room cleanings, right? Where the housekeeper would automatically go into your room unless you put a do not disturb sign. They would just go into your room. They would do what needed to be done to clean the room for the day and make your bed. Then all of a sudden that started to go away a few years ago. And my mom was in a property where that was happening. And what that does actually is that means they require less workers because there's less quote unquote work to be done, when that's not true, because that room has to be cleaned at some point when the guest leaves. And it's dirtier, right? But what actually has happened after COVID is that has been put on steroids, because after COVID, many companies have just been running on very skeleton crews and having these overwhelmingly difficult rooms to clean, because they've had this policy that they've been working on for many years to implement. And by the way, the customer gets perks for not getting their room cleaned every day. They'll say, you get a $20 voucher for a buffet. So basically, we'll give you $20 so we don't have to have the part-time housekeeper here. It's cost-cutting measures at the end of the day. They want to cut costs, not have as many housekeepers working. And after COVID, it got even worse. It went on steroids. And housekeepers have been saying since the beginning of this is bullshit. This is a way to basically not employ us or cut down our hours, or, basically not have part-time staff anymore, which is the only way you can start working here as part-timers. So there's very many hidden real reasons for this. And now after COVID, you're saying, I, as a housekeeper, have to go into a room that I haven't gone into in like a week, and I have to clean all that shit up, frankly? That's ridiculous. And 1 October, the way it works is, if you know the story, is the guest, had that he didn't choose to have daily room cleaning. So the housekeepers couldn't go into the room to see what the heck he had in there. And trust me, when that wasn't a policy, housekeepers found many a troubling things in rooms, like criminal things. And so it's for safety, it's for employment, for continued employment of people. And this is just a loophole. And it's not that, Lombardo, the resorts don't like it. Yeah, they don't like it because they're going to have to pay people. They're going to have to pay people on the clock, have people on the clock and pay them. That's why they don't like it.
So what about the excuse? Because I've heard this even from some people we know. Well, this should be negotiated in their contract, which it was in most of the strip properties. It is now in their contract. And there are negotiations that happen all the time on the strip with culinary. They just got through the last round, I think, last year. And then with Virgin Hotels being the last one to kind of get their contract done, all of this was negotiated in the contract. But this is very much, like you're saying, a safety issue. This is very much a kind of a OSHA type issue. Why is it important for a bill like this to come back? In addition to, it's not even what culinary wants at this point, which is important, and they should be able to ask for a bill. This was the big brouhaha last session for all of you who are paying attention, and part of the reason why culinary did what they did during the election cycle. But talk to us about some of the other things. Lori Rogich isn't just doing it for the union. She's also talking about marijuana smoke. She's talking about sex trafficking. She's talking about all kinds of other stuff that is happening in these hotel rooms to be why daily room cleaning is important. It's a safety issue, not only for the workers themselves, but also for the other people staying in the hotel. Talk to us about that.
That I don't know how many stories my mom has told me throughout her years of things or people or situations that she has found, that she has seen, that she has overheard, that caused her to call the authorities. And the authorities found things that are awful. And that is because she went into the room, she saw things, and that if all of this doesn't get you, if the fact that, maybe workers should have their due and they should go to work just as they signed up for and not have their hours cut, if that doesn't get you, the tourists and all of the people that actually spend money here, resorts, it's safer for them because there's a lot of fucked up shit that happens on the strip. Let's be brutally honest, that we don't hear about because they want to keep the strip's image a certain way. And as a former sheriff, Lombardo should know about this shit that happens because sure as shit, Metro knows the shit that happens. Suicides, sex trafficking, people just dead in the room, killed, found because a housekeeper was there. Just weapons in the room for some reason, tech in the room that shouldn't be there, and like different, I remember once there's a story of a property that my mom worked in of housekeepers finding like telescopes and like binoculars looking into the strip. And they were like, these are too many to just be like a family's touristy binoculars. Sure as shit. Metro came over, took those people. Real shit happens on the strip. And a lot of times, most of the times, the only people that see them are the housekeepers. It's kind of this rule of life that it's the cleaners that know all the shit that happens because they get to go in unforeseen and they get to see everything. And that's really, I hate to say it, but the question now should be posed to the resorts. Do you give a shit about the safety of your customers, or do you just want to turn a blind eye? Because whatever, at least they paid for their room. I don't care what actually happens to them. Decision's up to them.
Yep. So we'll see. We shall see how this all works out. It should be very interesting, and it's something that definitely could be part of the end game, because from everything I'm hearing, Lori Rogich is still going to do it. She's still going to go through with it, and she expects a hearing. So,
and I love that it's a Republican pushing this bill.
I mean, to be honest, if you look at it, culinary ended up endorsing Lori Rogich, sadly, over the Democrat in my race, in my district. And I love Dallas Harris to death, but she looked at culinary and basically told them she sided with the hotels and the resorts over the workers. So that's what happened, sadly. And there was some accountability there done on behalf of the union. And so this is what happens when you forget who your friends and who your allies are when you're an elected official sometimes.
And I want to remind everybody from both sides of the aisle, from the most freshman legislator to the leadership of both chambers, to Governor Lombardo, and to every human being that is in elected office here in Nevada, the backbone of this state are the workers working every single day up and down that street.
Yep.
That's who they are.
And that's who makes the money in this state. I mean, you can sit here and say, oh, but mining pays what they need to. No, they don't. They still don't pay enough.
People don't even know that mining happens in Nevada, but they sure as shit know the strip.
Right. And when the strip shut down, the entire state shut down. So just remember where all the money comes from and who those workers are who are keeping the lights on every day in those hotels. And where, if you like to have nice things, you need those workers to show up every day and do their job safely to be able to build the roads and the schools and all that. Because again, mining ain't paying that much money. They are paying more than they used to, which was nothing. But they are still not paying enough. And the hotels and the resorts are the ones who keep the lights on. And listen, culinary and the resorts usually have a pretty good relationship. They understand they need each other there. A working relationships with each other. But like you were saying, this is a safety issue. And so we need to take a good hard look at this because I suspect this issue is not going away.
Yeah, and it's not. And to other people that might say, oh, well, this should be in the contract and it's contract fight. That was a valid argument maybe two sessions ago, maybe.
And it is in their contract now.
But it has gotten so bad and the companies are such little shitty loophole finding people that you have to now make it a law. You do.
It's a safety issue. It's just like any other safety issue that you put into OSHA. It's the same premise. Having a husband who does this every day, you're not allowed to cut people's arms off. You're not allowed to put them at risk when they're standing at, a production line. You're not allowed to put them at risk when they're doing construction on new houses. The same rule should apply to the hotels. You should not be putting your workers or the people who are staying in those hotels at risk. That's really what it boils down to.
Yeah. And housekeeping is just as labor intensive, sometimes more than many others. Like,
actually, it's more. I think it's more labor intensive than most manufacturing, especially the manufacturing Nick has done. Come on,
where they just stand there.
I mean, the paper plant was a little different, but like the other ones. Anyways, all right, let's go on to WTF is going on in the world. Let's look globally at what's going on in the world and what the fuck are we thinking about it? Go ahead, Maria. What's on your mind?
On my mind? Oh, well.
You want to talk about Easter egg roll? Because this one's my favorite for the week.
Let's go, because I am dumbfounded by it. I can't, but also it's not unbelievable.
So Maria and I have been to the White House Easter egg roll several times during the Biden administration. I think you and I went twice. I don't remember. Anyways, it was a fun-filled event. Lots of children. Very, very fun. They give out little tchotchkes. Beautiful event on the back side of the White House. And it's a historic event. It's been happening for decades. And it's something that both Republicans and Democrats do. This is a nonpartisan event. Serves the community. Lots of people go. So, this year, the headline is, "This is not your grandmother's Easter egg roll." White House seeks corporate sponsorships for Easter event.
This Easter egg roll brought to you by Tesla. You're gonna have burning Cybertruck.
I don't even know if I can really articulate them at this moment because, as we were preparing to go live on this podcast, I did a little Google search on CNN. Like, what's going on in the world? What's going to make my jaw drop? And that's the one that came up. Because there were no corporate sponsorships when we were there that I remember. Did you remember?
Not that I.
Like cool, tchotchkes given out. There were a lot of there's a pretty little Easter egg that they give out. I think they give that out every year. There was some cute little cookie cutters that have like the White House on them that were given out. There was some other there was some other candy and stuff that I'm assuming like the companies gave to the White House to give to the kids. Or maybe it was sponsored by them, but there were no like logos anywhere. Like it was just candy that was being handed out and like cookies that were being handed out. But I don't remember logos. Do you?
No. And that's how you know it wasn't like truly sponsored, because you'd remember if it said this brought to you by Ben and Jerry's.
Which, by the way, Ben and Jerry's would never do that right now. But yes, no, I don't remember anything being like brought to you by Tesla. No, didn't happen. Apparently, we're gonna have branding on all the little Easter eggs. Children, get ready. I've just never there's always been like brand things that happen. Like if GM, when the car deal happened, like GM will roll up with their shit, whatever. I've never seen anything quite this blatant, though, I guess is kind of my thought process, right? Like it's just right in your face. And like they just don't care. I don't know. It's wild to me. Okay. Canada's going to have an election, apparently. They're getting ready to put the candidates on the ballot. Apparently, though, both candidates have different things going on with this. It'll be interesting to see how Canada deals with the United States, because apparently now that's going to be a part of their election. Is how does Canada feel about the U.S. and the nonsense that we have going on here? You're welcome, Canada. I'm sorry.
I hope that elbows up is a bipartisan issue in this race. And if people...
All right, explain what elbows up are.
So it is apparently a Canadian thing. If I first saw it when Mike Myers was on SNL and played Elon Musk fabulously. And he had a shirt at the end that said Canada is not for sale. And he kept doing this. He kept saying elbows up, elbows up. And I think it's a hockey thing. And there was actually this commercial, though, of him and the current prime minister who replaced Trudeau, Canadian dudes practice for hockey, and Mike Myers was there, and they were talking about how Mike Myers may live in the US, but he loves Canada, and so he went through this like Canadian quiz, and at the end they both started shouting elbows up, and so I hope that's like a unifying thing for everyone to like F you US, elbows up, we're not going to be the 51st state.
What a great time to be alive, watching the nicest people on this planet, Canadians, literally be like, no, Donald Trump. No, Americans. We don't want your bullshit.
They are so pissed. They're throwing feces on Wayne Gretzky statues. Do you know how bad you have to piss off a Canadian for them to hate Wayne Gretzky, their Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ? And they're like, nope.
That's like closest American they can get to.
But like throwing feces at his statue that they built in Canada.
God. I'm sorry, world. I'm sorry. I know we're a mess. I'm sorry, world. When I was in Bora Bora in December, I met two Canadians, and I literally asked them, I was like, what does it feel like to live above a burning meth lab? Because that's what I feel like we are at this point.
We totally are.
Living above a burning Cybertruck. God. All right, well, I don't think we can leave this section without talking about another headline I read you before we came on the show, which is the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, is nearing an agreement to use its data to help ICE locate undocumented migrants.
That is so bad.
Go forth, Maria.
That is so fucking bad. That's almost scarier than anything else, because we all know all the info the IRS has and how...
And that undocumented people and various others,
they still
pay their taxes.
Yep. And,
here she goes. I knew this was going to trigger.
Everything.
For everybody listening at home, that's the Queen yelling in the background.
Motherfucker. Yeah. So, IRS, that's for you, motherfuckers. But yeah, they basically do file. But guess what? They don't get anything back. They file and they pay. And we don't get by the way, public benefits. So we don't get anything back other than like using the road, sending your kids to public school.
Why do you keep saying we?
Because I, as an undocumented human for 17 years, know what that life is like. So for those that didn't know, and by the way,
don't get a fucking penny.
and we don't get a fucking penny from the government.
Guest appearance by the Queen.
Guest appearance by the Queen.
Maria's
And
mother.
this is something also, we've been talking a lot about this because especially now that I travel internationally a lot for work, and even before Trump, because I was an undocumented person before it was cool to come out of the shadows, I still, no matter what, had like a reticence of going through any immigration standpoint, not just the US, but like going into any country, going out of any country. I was always like, oh my God, say the right thing, do whatever. And I think that's something that unless you've lived through that experience, or you've lived in turbulent times, or you've gone into a turbulent country where like something can happen, you take that for granted. And I think a lot of people, even within the immigrant community, especially young people, took for granted the power that the immigration industrial complex, aka what used to be INS, all the different parts of Homeland Security, they have incredible power. And, you know, it's depending on what their bosses want them to do, they won't act on all that power. If the bosses want them to act on, aka the president and the director of Homeland Security, they will act on all their power. Like, they could always just look through your phone. They could always just put you in a room and ask you questions. They have for many years for people that they suspected something of, right? Now they're just doing it a lot more. And so I think, you know, it's just because I'm saying that, do I think it's right? Fuck no. But it means that it's real. It has been real for many people for a long time. And especially a lot of us older people, and my mom older people, said, this will happen again at some point. And I think many people said, that is too dramatic. That is not going to happen. And so now, literally the only protection we have is if you're a U.S. citizen.
And even then,
if you're naturalized,
don't take it for granted.
they can still strip it, right? They can just say treason.
Listen, people have told me I'm crazy, but they've told me I'm crazy a lot in my life. And usually that crazy ends up being right. I think this is a slippery slope to hell. And I think, how far back do you go? Because unless you're indigenous to this land, meaning Native Americans, unless you're indigenous to this land, we're all immigrants at some point in our lives, at some point in our lineage. So how far back are you going to go? You could go back to the Mayflower? Because then you're going to have to self-deport Donald Trump. You're going to have to self-deport Elon Musk. So I just want to remind everybody, this country is a country of immigrants. We're all immigrants unless you are truly an indigenous person whose land we all squat on.
And to bring it back to something that happened recently, they were arresting Native Americans thinking they were illegal, quote unquote. And so that is something that, you know, people have to understand. That is the world we live in. It's shitty. It's terrible.
Disgusting.
But these people have shown their true colors. And I think if you want to know how to live in a world like this, ask someone that has been an immigrant when immigrants truly had to live in the shadows and had to absolutely kind of like basically live underground. And I remember, you know, for many years while you and I worked together, I would always talk about how a lot of people didn't have to go through that. Even younger immigrants didn't have to go through that, you know, not as much as like their parents or their grandparents did. It is a skill. It is a resilience that you have to build. And it is one that is akin to all of the different struggles that have had to happen of people literally hiding from a government so that they don't get caught.
So in this article, CNN was reporting that earlier in the year, DHS had circulated a memo to the IRS that represented a sweeping request for information about suspected undocumented immigrants, including the home addresses of several 100,000 individuals who paid federal taxes based on their individual taxpayer identification numbers, according to a source with direct knowledge of the document. Privacy experts say that would be a violation of the strict disclosure laws that the IRS operates under, which prohibit the release of tax information by an IRS employee. They don't care. They're going to get rid of all the IRS employees. Then it goes on to say in the CNN article, the draft the person described Sunday appears to be a narrow version of the earlier draft. Under the current iteration, the IRS would confirm migrants' addresses rather than provide the information to ICE. It's still just as bad. Still, it would amount to a major shift by the agency. Requests would need to be submitted by DHS Secretary Kristi Noem or Acting ICE Director Todd Lyons, and must include the name and address of the taxpayer and the date of their removal order, which would allow the IRS to confirm the information. And I go back to, so they're talking about undocumented people. So once they do that to the undocumented folks, when do they start going to TPS people? When do they start going to people on DACA? Because that's always my question, is like, how far down now is this slippery slope going to go?
And let's go even further, citizens who oppose the government.
I mean, sign me up. But yes.
Yeah, just right to the gulag.
Nazi Germany all over again. This nonsense.
It's Trump's and his father and his grandfather's wet dream.
Disgusting. All right, let's wrap this puppy up because I know you got a busy night ahead of you.
Yes.
All right, hot takes and headaches, everyone, where we vent about anything and everything. And I've been saving this one all week for you, Maria. So you hit me first. What's your hot take or headache this week?
Boy, now I'm curious as to what you have to say. My hot take is that maybe, just maybe, smartphones were a mistake and we should have just stuck to flip phones. Would save
You got some personal experiences going on with that, Maria?
Yeah. And man,
and all the tracking data and how the government can track us on our cell phones and
so much better.
A little too much data that the government has for you, Maria. Feeling a little iffy?
We're living in the Matrix and they were real and fuck that shit. No.
Well, we'll talk about next week what you're doing and why you have said opinion about said flip phone next week when you're back from what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Maria's doing some shit again, everyone. So pay attention if Annette has to go burn some stuff to the ground to get her back into the U.S.
Yeah. Hopefully not. Hopefully not.
I mean, listen, I'm always looking for a good day to burn shit to the ground. So I'd love to light some stuff up right now. Not a Tesla, though, everyone, for the record. Did you read? Speaking of that for a second, I just want to talk about Las Vegas for a minute. The thing that set the Teslas on fire over by my house, and for the record, everyone, I wasn't in Las Vegas when this happened. I was in Carson City, so there was no possibility of it being me, okay?
Was it you?
It was a Molotov cocktail that set the first Tesla on fire.
Chulo.
Las Vegas had it in him.
Chulo,
was it you?
He's looking very guilty.
Yeah, Chulo's the one who chucked the Molotov cocktail at the Tesla. Look at him. He did it. He was like, it was me. I Molotov cocktailed the Tesla.
Oh, my goodness.
So funny. I know we're not supposed to be laughing about things burning down, but again, I didn't know how Las Vegas had it in them. I was shocked.
Look, listen, as long as fucking Elon Musk is laughing about laying people off, about destroying the government, about being a Nazi, because he is a Nazi, about all this shit he believes, we get to laugh at his shit and his misery.
I mean, it's just a couple of cars, to be honest, but it's totally, when you compare it to the damage in lasting, horrifying things that Elon Musk is doing, I'm sorry, like it pales in comparison. But I have to say, my fellow Las Vegans, I didn't know you had it in you. When I read that over the weekend, I told Nick, I was like, damn, okay.
Cocktails, that is reserved for Europe and Latin American protests. Like, very good.
Like, we're learning some shit in Vegas. Okay.
Wait,
right.
I might have to ask my mother where she was that day.
Don't put that out there on the internet. Jesus Christ. It's chulo. Anyways, my hot take and headache this week. And it's been an ongoing hot take and headache I've had for quite some time. So nobody will be surprised when I say this one, but Nancy Pelosi had a lot to say to Hakeem Jeffries and chuckled Schumer this past week about using their power and actually standing up to Donald Trump and Elon Musk, the real president, Elon Musk, and using their power correctly in this time instead of just sitting idly by and watching this shit happen. And I gotta say, Nancy Pelosi is right. And I'm looking at you, Catherine Cortez Masto. I get we're trying to sit here and say, but if we shut the government down, employees are going to be fired and maybe more of them won't ever be brought back on. They're all going to be fired soon. It doesn't matter.
They're all going to be fired.
All of these departments will eventually be shut down. I get Donald Trump could do more damage if the government shut down. I get it. And I'm going to need a little bit of a different attitude from you this time. This is not normal circumstances. These are not normal times.
He is a player, and you need
a hostile regime. It is a slow-moving coup. I'm going to need you to act like it now.
Yeah, these aren't normal times. These aren't times to be too vicious to a fault. You need to act like it's a coup and respond to it accordingly. Like, when people in Latin America are like, oh, that's rough, or like, didn't know that would happen over there, that means we're not in normal operating circumstances, and you gotta act accordingly.
Maria, Catherine Cortez Masto, Senator of Nevada, came to the Nevada Legislature last week, and I sat through the speech. It was not a very long speech, where she made excuse after excuse after excuse about why she voted on that resolution to continue funding the government, basically. And the excuse was, well, Jackie Rosen voted for it, so we had a Democrat who voted against it. Circumstances, right? A normal Republican, I would get a vote like that strategically from like we need to keep the government going and like we can split the baby here, right? We can have it both ways because we have 2 Democratic senators in Nevada. We are not living in normal times, and people want to see our elected officials, especially our Democrats, do some things to push back on the Trump administration and hold the Trump administration and Elon Musk accountable. Right now, I need action. I need actual use of power in a strategic way. Get a fucking plan together and let's do this, because what the Dems are doing right now is pathetic.
It ain't
absolutely pathetic.
Yeah, it ain't fucking working.
When Annette Magnus is agreeing with Bernard and AOC, we got problems.
Yeah.
Because that is not a normal thing Annette does. Friends. I just got hot talking about it. It just pissed me off. Woo.
Yeah, me too.
Definitely a hot take and a headache. Get your shit together, friends. Nevada delegation. The entire delegation. Get your shit together. I expect more from you right now. And Mark Amidate, we're looking at you too, friend. We are looking at you too. So don't think you're off the hook here because you're just useless.
Be a true Nevada libertarian. Do what the
fuck you are.
Drink some pecan punch and do what's right.
Get in there and do something useful for a change. For Nevadans. All Nevadans. All right. Well, we've managed to piss me off. So that's good. All right. So before we go, it's time for the final bell. Your mic drop moment of the week. What do you want people to take away from this episode, Maria?
We've said it multiple times, but really pay attention to what's Chulo's leaning in here.
Chulo is leaning in. He wants everybody to know.
Yeah. Chulo wants everyone to know to get involved at the state level because it might be the only thing that is positive in the U.S.
The government left.
Yeah. We're just going to go back to fiefdoms at some point. And also, to be honest, like, look, I was reading a graphic from, like, this person I follow. She does, like, different slides of, like, how to survive this and how to survive that, how to vote with your dollar and different things. And she, like, started to say, prepare financially for the worst. Yeah. I think especially Americans and, many people that maybe have never lived in a country or a government where shit went south and you really had to be on your own, you really have to, if you don't know how to do that and don't know that that's possible, start reading on how to do that and like actually plan for the worst.
Yep. 100%. All right, my mic drop moment is much like Maria said, get involved with your state government because truly it may be the only government left soon. And that's sad when we're first in the country and trying to educate your children. So buckle up, everyone. It's going to be a bumpy ride. But also, I think it's really important to ask questions to understand the process we're in with the Nevada Legislature, to ask questions if you don't understand something and you're like, how the heck does this work? Text us, call us, message us, put it in the chat. We're here to answer your questions about the Nevada Legislature or literally anything else that's going on in the world. I mean, we want to hear from you. So if you've got questions, we've got answers, and that's our mic drop moments for the week. So that's all we have time for today. We've been on chatting for quite some time. Next week, we will actually have a guest. We're going to have someone from Grassroots Lobby Days come on and tell you about what's coming up for Grassroots Lobby Days. So if you haven't registered yet, now's the time to register. We will put that link in the chat. And don't forget to subscribe. There we go. And leave us a review. It keeps us going and helps more people find the show. So subscribe, share this podcast on your social media. Make sure you watch every week. Give us a little review. We need all of that. Like, share it on social, share it on all your different pages. We need more people to be watching this, so get involved and help us build our audience. Maria?
Yes, and Chulo's mic drop is adopt, don't shop, I guess.
Always.
And stay sharp, stay sassy, just like Chulo does every day. And we'll see you next week.
All right, everyone. Have a good week. Stay safe out there. Bye.